Yeah, so when I first started with this company, with this job, um, we did not have a contract management system. And I'm an attorney. My entire job is dealing with contracts. We generate a lot of contracts, we keep a lot of contracts. We've got a lot of old contracts that we're storing. But essentially, we had one person who was in charge of all those contracts, and she was keeping track of them manually across emails and spreadsheets. So when we first got the opportunity to get a contract management system, the first thing my boss and I talked about was how to get everyone on board with the new system versus the old system, which was one woman does everything and everyone else doesn't have to do much. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of obstacles. People get into routines. People don't necessarily like changing processes and procedures that they've been doing for years. So yes, there are a lot of obstacles when someone says change management, and that's probably the first thing that we thought of and the first kind of thing that we dealt with.
So one of the big issues, and we'll focus on legal tech deployment in a moment, but one of the big issues I think we always face when we talk about change management, one of those things that I get asked a lot, and I know we've talked about this, is what do you how do you deal with, there's all these other steps, but how do you deal with the detractor or the person who doesn't want to do it? Now, you and I have talked before about one of your colleagues who was that two of your colleagues, one who was a fantastic supporter and the other who was a little different. And I don't want to be mean about it, but you've pointed out that she's made a decision for herself also. So, you know, I would love to share, if it's okay with you, I'd love for you to share your that experience about how you've dealt with that and the kind of personality conflicts that happened.
Absolutely. So yes, we. I work in a company. I All my colleagues have been there for 9 plus years. My boss, the VP of the company, I think she was the newest hire at 6 or 7 years ago. So we're dealing with people that have been in this company, basically doing the same thing for the better part of a decade. And when I came in and said, "All right, we're gonna start doing this new thing when we generate contracts," you know, people they were happy to do their job, and no one was going to straight up say no, I don't want to do this. um, but then at the same time they just weren't using contract pod uh, when after we had showed them how to do it and how. So the first thing we kind of did is we had meetings and we talked with them about what about the new process, what part of the new process wasn't working or made them reluctant. And we just started with, we started with baby steps. And a lot of it, in fact, almost the entire thing was just not knowing how to use the new system, not knowing how to use Contract Pod. So, like I said, we basically had one woman who was in charge of tracking all of our contracts. Anytime there's a new contract, she would enter it into a spreadsheet and email it around. And that's how we kept track of all of our contracts, which, again, as an attorney, terrified me. That sounds, uh, dangerous. Like we're one human error away from losing millions of dollars or something like that. One tiny, very easy mistake away from a big, bad business situation. So this woman is Jan, and she is the sweetest woman, but she is a little bit older and a little bit technologically averse. Um, so what we've done is we have just included her in every step of the process. She was when I was like when we were purchasing Contract Pod, she was in those meetings. When we were having the very first, what do we want our version of Contract Pod to look like? She was in all those meetings. So that was a huge part of it. And then Jan, was able to go to some of the other more reluctant people and spread a little bit more positivity that way. So I think including as many people that you think could be, difficult from as early as possible, I think was a huge help for us.
So, one of the areas that sorry, I should probably choose my words before I start speaking. Um, so, first, I do want to invite anyone who's listening in. If you've got questions, please put them into the chat box. DJ or I will be happy to answer them. And we do feel like we wanted to conduct both a kind of talking session, but also question and answer as it goes along. Um, so you talked a little bit about the obstacle there. Now, there are many, many ways to do digital transformation, legal transformation, change management. They're all different words to say what many of us are trying to accomplish in our law departments and even law firms and interactions with the rest of the business. So obviously that detractor or the difficulty is one of those common obstacles. What are some of the other obstacles you've discovered in your journey here in your modern change management and your enterprise user adoption? What are some of the other obstacles you've heard about or you've experienced when it comes to this sort of technology deployment, especially in law departments?
One of the big one was one huge one that we're actually dealing with right now is the people at the top, the bosses, not having enough time to dedicate to learning the process. I set up several meetings and tutorials, and they kept getting rescheduled, or not everyone would show up. I used Contract Pod has some very useful user guides that I was able to adapt to make like kind of a quick sheet for everyone. Luckily, luckily most of what they're doing is just approving or not. They're like saying, okay, this contract is fine, I approve. So luckily, I don't know exactly when this came around because there have been some like recent updates to Contract Pod, but the approval process for Contract Pod is kind of extraordinary in its simplicity and uh, ease of use. It's a big thumbs up or a thumbs down or a button to send it to someone else. And those are your three options. You can say yes, no, or I don't want to deal with this. Someone else deal with it. So all of the bosses were able to figure this out really quickly and very easily. But it was more of I couldn't, wrangle them into these meetings where I had to teach them how to use it. So I just started sending them the approvals, and it turns out that part's pretty easy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. And actually, it's funny because I used to just click the button in the email, and now I'm spending so much more time in the browser application because we support an email application, we have an Outlook plugin, we've got this, but now I just like sitting there because and one of the things that I like about our product, not that I don't like, I like everything about it really. For those of you who don't know, I was actually a customer before I joined the company. But one of the things I really like is that it's purple and it's easy on the eyes. So if you really, really, if you're like me and you're staring at a screen all day, having something relaxing, um, it reminds me of back in high school when we used to sit in I went to a big theater high school and we had an actual green room with green walls and all that. So I
Ooh la
have
la.
yeah, it was very fancy. So I Beth, I want to come back to your question because we do want to talk about that in a few minutes. But keep that in mind, and we'll jump back to that. So, in some of what you were saying before, DJ, you had mentioned that on a day-to-day basis, it's changed the way everyone's operating. What benefits have you seen before just you've gotten the ease of use there, but what else? What other benefits have you seen with the adoption of the technology?
So the biggest benefit, and it's so easy and it's so simple, and this it seems like this shouldn't have been a big problem. But we have a bunch of different kinds of contracts, but our main ones are, so we're a television network. Our main contracts are our deals with the cable providers, the television providers, the Direct TVs, the Comcast, the Time Warner Cables of the world. And within those contracts, uh, different affiliates have different provisions. So one of the things my boss would say is pull all the contracts with, X and Y provisions, which means that I was just going into a shared drive, opening up hundreds of contracts and scanning and seeing if that provision was in that contract. And if it was, moving it into this folder that we needed. The biggest benefit, and that this project took me hours, like 2 full days to find all the contracts with this particular thing. Once contract was installed, this project took 5 seconds. We did a text search for the provision we were looking for, not just across the contracts, not like across all the contracts that we have stored on ContractPod. And it found exactly the contracts we were looking for in a matter of seconds, rather than 2 full workdays. So that one, for me personally, huge benefit. Huge time-saving application, being able to text search your contracts. Uh-oh, Jerry.
I
We
should
lost
probably
your audio. There we go.
I'm using my headset, and I forgot that I muted myself so that I didn't interrupt you with. I have a tree full of cats here, and they all decided that during your last discussion was a perfect time to start expressing themselves loudly. So first of all, I'm really glad to hear that you're experiencing such a wonderful. Your experience has been so wonderful. For some of the people that are listening today, some of them may not be at maybe just starting their digital transformation, or maybe trying to figure out how to justify it. What, in your view, why is it important to go through this process if they haven't already started?
I can think of many, many reasons. A few off the top of my head, what I was just saying is time saving. We save so much time in ContractPod versus what we were doing before. The next is risk. Having a system like ContractPod just makes everything a little less risky. That we're just less likely to have a mistake. And I'm just talking about missing an expiration date or a renewal deadline or something like that. Not even getting into ContractPod's own risk assessment within the contract tool. Just it's risky having one human be in charge of all these contracts. And finally, this is kind of a tricky situation, but like return on investment, ContractPod. So, like I said, we have this wonderful woman, Jan. She's kind of our contract person. She was a reluctant ContractPod adopter, and she's now one of its biggest fans. She's in there all the time. But when when Jan decides to retire, um, we may not need a new Jan because of the things that Contract Pod can do. And I know that's a real delicate thing to talk about, but it's something that my bosses really, really are not shy about talking about.
One, in fact, that goes right into the next question I had for you, which is why do you think some people are against implementing legal technology? And before you answer, one thing that I always point out, and believe it or not, we were just talking about this before the call. I had an experience recently where someone started sending me some very nasty messages about the fact that I'm such a proponent of transformation, artificial intelligence, uh, and it is scary for some people. And I always point out the goal of products like Contract Pod AI in general, is not replacing people. It's augment. I like the other sort of AI. It's augmented intelligence. You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so what other reasons? What other things do you think? Why are some people against implementing legal technology generally? Is it a just I don't want to learn it? And actually, we can get a little bit into Beth's question now, if you'd like. Or
Yeah.
is it scare? Is it frightfulness? Or is it simply they refuse to change? Or is it a combination of all three? In your opinion, of course.
I think it's definitely a combo. I've talked to some people, it was not so much reluctance to change as it was they're just good at the thing. They know how to do this system already and everything's working. So why change it? I guess that is reluctance to change. But some of the older attorneys I've spoken with, they are like, why do I need artificial intelligence reading this document? That's my job. Like that's why I went to school. That's why I have this job that I do have. And my response, my response to that was, yeah, you're hopefully still reading the contract after the AI process is finished. It's not doing your job for you. It's exactly what you're saying. It's augmenting. It's perhaps saving you a few minutes, maybe a couple hours on doing that first proofread for you, rather than you having to do the entire process yourself. But
Oh,
yes, augmenting is, yeah, I like that term for what this does.
I mean, to me, it's really impressive. And in fact, there was a recent study that I think is fascinating that found that human lawyers, when they review a contract, they get, you know, they're being measured. So we can't be entirely sure this isn't perfectly correct, but a human being hits about 89 to 92% of the issues that are set out. So those of you who you know, I personally don't remember taking the bar exam, but if you were a lawyer and you took the bar exam, or even your law school exams, it was all about issue spotting, and your professor or the bar examiners throw in all these different issues you can hit on, and you're expected to catch some of them, but not all of them. So imagine what we've discovered, though, and what we've been what research is showing us: humans get 89 to 88 to 92% of the issues. An untrained computer, a computer working alone will hit 92 to 95%. A human working together with a computer hits 100%. Not, and I think the result was 99.999% of the time, nearly 100% of the time, is going to do it. And again, it's not about replacing people. That's the number one thing. And I think
Yes.
that's when we were talking earlier, that was what this person online was attacking me about. I believe me, I am 100% in favor of full employment for lawyers, for legal professionals, for allied professionals. I want jobs for everybody, and I think we all do really important things. But by using this technology, and I think this is a really good thing to keep in mind, you're helping yourself do better. You're enhancing what you can do, and ultimately, you're getting better at doing that. So I would like to talk about, and DJ, I hope you don't mind if I lead off. Sure. Thank you, Colin. Don't forget to vote, people. It's what, 29 days or 59 days to the election. Uh,
Don't
Vote
forget about
Jerry
your
and
local
DJ.
primaries. Yeah.
Vote Jerry
Vote.
and DJ. So Beth's question, I'm going to jump to that now, even though we're kind of in the middle of the session. Beth asks, "What is your experience?" She's planning to move to a new contracting platform in the fourth quarter. She asks, "What's your recommendation and experience on how to best train 60 people on a new solution? We're all super busy, so traditional sit in front of a PC for 6 hours isn't feasible." I, I want to hear your answer, DJ, because I do have some stuff I'd like to share on that, but I think I'd like to hear what you think first.
Totally. Beth, this is exactly what I'm dealing with at the moment. We have kind of our core business affairs legal team trained up and using the system, but now we are rolling it out to everyone else in all of our different regions and across. And, we've got more than 60 people that need to learn how to do this. So what we've decided, we've compartmentalized. So we've got 4 different regions, and within those 4 regions, we have different departments. So what we've actually done, because obviously it would be real easy to just go, okay, we're going to go Seattle, Rocky Mountain, Southwest, and then Pittsburgh, and just hit it regionally. But we're going departmental. We're going horizontal. So we're going to have all the programmers across all 4 regions learn how to use it, and then roll it out that way. So it'll be one department at a time per region learns this system, and then it'll be 2 departments that work together, and then after a couple months it'll be half of all the regions are using this tool. And by then, it should be much easier because you'll have a bunch of people in each region that know how to use it. So that's our plan at the time being.
So Beth, one thing I want to add to what DJ just said is, the first thing I want to add is, Bloomberg actually had a study about this recently, and in their 2021 legal technology survey, more than 70% of the people who responded said that they had received 3 hours of legal technology training or less in the last 12 months on new or existing technology. So there's a few things I think that need to be taken into account there. One, you want to train people to do the tasks they need to do. So if you have admins who are there, those administrative users, those super users, they're not only just your internal evangelists for the product, they're the ones who are going to be hopefully get the questions and hopefully work with their teams to do that. Now, with legal products, a lot of those super users are your lawyers. So if you're focusing on them, you want to make sure that they can do the tasks that they have to do, and that what they need training on are the tasks that are more complex. It's not, DJ mentioned earlier, we've got a thumbs up and a thumbs down and a delegate button for approvals in ContractPod. It when you get that approval notice, it says, "Hey," and I'll be a little cute here. "Hey, DJ, Jerry submitted a contract and it has a unlimited liability. It needs your approval. Do you want to approve, disapprove, or send to the GC?" DJ is not going to have to learn much. He's going to know approve, disapprove, or send. And it often helps to have, beyond that. Sorry, DJ. Uh, Beyond that, I think, one, you want to have a team. You want to be able to bring in a vendor, your partner, whoever you're working with. You want them to focus on what they need to know. You don't need to train them on every single tiny aspect of the system, but you want to train them so that they can use it. You want to provide the materials so they can learn more. You want to have consistent availability of training and additional assistance from the vendor, I would be, it would be terrible if I said, sure, you get 1 hour of training and then that's it. Everything else costs you money. So you want to be able sure that you're working with a vendor, that your internal teams are all aligned, that training is not a one-time 6 hour thing. But and the way I've done it with my team at my prior company, again, I was a customer. We had a 2 hour long training for legal, and then every few weeks after implementation completed, we had a 30-minute, hey, here's something new we can do. And for the users who just needed to submit a document or had approval roles, they had a 30-minute training. The sales team had a 45-minute training led by a champion I picked out in the sales department. So I think if you aim your training and what you're trying to do to the people and focus it on the tasks those people will be doing, you can achieve a much deeper level of knowledge without spending 6 hours clicking buttons going, okay, here's how you drag and drop from this to this. Do some people need extra support? Of course they do. You know, not everybody is going to be comfortable with one task or another. But by doing this, you actually really are able to increase use adoption and engagement. And that actually is one of my questions for DJ now. How were you able to, beyond just training and talking a little bit about it, how were you able to boost user adoption and engagement across the company? What did you tell people that really drove them to go and say, yeah, we got to do this. We're going to learn it.
Well, part of it is exactly what you just said. The compartmentalization. So, for example, the first big rollout that we did was our programmers. These are the people who get the television content and say we need a contract for them so that we can air this show or whatever. They're the ones requesting these contracts all the time. So we didn't need to teach them the entire process from start to finish. We needed to teach them how to request a new contract, which is a fairly easy process to learn, and only took, about an hour. So telling them that they only need to learn one part and that it's going to make their jobs easier once they learn this one little thing really helped. But previous contract, right?
One quick trick to get your team to adopt the new platform. It's your clickbait headline right there.
Yeah, just tell them that they only have to learn one little part of it. Just like I was saying earlier with my bosses, all they had to learn was the approval process, and I kept trying to get them into a training session and it never worked. Just started sending them approval emails, and the process is simple enough that they figured it out.
So, one thing that I do like pointing out is technology really offers significant or very significant potential for cost savings far ahead of many other opportunities. One thing we've actually seen is, and this is interesting, is for those of you who are on the fence about, personnel or wondering how it would affect this, we've actually seen an uptick in personnel that come on after because the business gets busier. They're able to do things faster. So now we're seeing folks come back to us and say, we thought we were going to, freeze hiring, but we've actually found that the savings from this has enabled us to hire someone else who can now focus on this because we don't have to send it out, or we can do this. So there are a lot of positives. It's not always just a here's how we save time, here's how we save cost. It can be really as much as this frees us up to do things that we really want to be doing. I look, I love contracts. I'm fully willing to admit that I sit down and if there's a good contract, I really enjoy reading it. But there's a lot of contracts where I'm really happy to have the AI go through and pick out some of the issues for me first, and I think that's really key. Um, you know, Speaking of that, because we just talked about one of the increasing user adoption, how were you able to convince the other departments within the organization to adopt and get the buy-in from those from their departments? What did you tell them? What did you kind of go through with them about how this would help them?
Uh, it was all time saving, and that's how we kind of started. Also focusing on just learn your one little part. Prior to Contract Pod, um, our programmers would have to fill out several different forms and send them all to Jan. Then Jan distributes the forms, and then a contract is generated. Uh, and two steps out of that are just completely removed. There's no forms to fill out. Contract Pod essentially is our contract request form now, so there's no additional paperwork to fill out. Um, so the programmer would fill out these forms, and then Jan would distribute the forms, and then I am like generating the contract. So now it's programmer requests, contract gets generated, whether it's Jan or me or someone else from the legal department. It's a two-step process rather than a 3 or 4-step process.
So
And they all seem to get on board with that.
yeah, and going back to that topic, I think when you think of this as change management, it's you know, as you're convincing people to do it, you're also looking for new business opportunities that are occurring during the transformation. Um, we know that digital transformation has become more and more important to business success. Are you seeing any uses? Are you seeing any new opportunities coming that you didn't see before because you've adopted this technology? I know that's a loaded question,
Yeah,
DJ. I feel like I know that's a tough one, and you weren't prepared for that one.
right. No, it's
I
fine.
I sprung that on him right now. I just came up with that as I was thinking about a different question.
Regional sports is tough. Absent signing another major sports team, there aren't a lot of opportunities to be gained. Um, but we have already started to see the opportunities are more like now that project A didn't take so long, we can focus on projects C through E. Because I mentioned earlier, I would have these projects where I would have to comb through contracts looking for specific provisions. So we knew all of these are the contracts that we have with a certain guarantee of pro games. And that would, take me 2 full days. Now it takes seconds. So the time saving and the ability to further multitask has been kind of the big benefit. Yeah, no, not sure what other opportunities there would
No,
even be.
it's fine. But what we do,
Right.
I was wondering what it would be because that was something I hadn't really thought about. That it actually opens new opportunities.
Right.
I think I think for a lot of legal customers, it's the opportunity and you know take this back with you to your leadership, your GC, your CLO. One opportunity, and this is something that I always share. The opportunity, and it again sounds kind of selfish. You can make yourself look really good. The GC role, the general counsel, the legal department role has changed so much over the past 20 to 30 years that there's this big change into from being just the risk stopper to being a dynamic strategic legal leader and being able to show where you add value, whether it's finding financial loss, discovering new ways to grow revenue. All of these things can be helped out through legal technology products because we're with them, you're able to discover some additional information. And I think that's one of the big opportunities we have with legal tech. Um, so
Absolutely. My boss just discovered the larger reporting feature of Contract Pod AI, um, which, I mean, she was so excited. She wanted to talk to me about it for an hour. And I said, yeah, yeah, Nina, I know all about it. I'm the one who set it up for you. Uh, just being able to see like a bird's eye view of all the contracts of a certain type, which ones are expiring soon, which ones are not worth that much money, which ones are worth more money than you thought. All of these things she got really excited about, and she was able, and this isn't something that I really do, but she is then able to like zoom out and say, okay, I can see, maybe let's focus less on this area and focus more on this area, because it looks like these areas are much more valuable.
so I see in the chat there's a question about oh, we got a lot of questions. So
Yeah.
what is change management? Um, I just put this in the chat, and it's actually a one of the first leaders in change management. And those of you who do this have probably heard of John Kotter, who in Harvard Business Review in 1995 wrote an article and then books and everything called Why Transformation Efforts Fail. And actually, so I put this in the chat, and what this is, it's the 8-stage process of creating major change. And whenever you see someone go through change management or share ideas, you'll actually notice, and I've noticed this myself, that these same 8 things are always in there. Sometimes you'll see 6, sometimes you'll see 20 because they've broken it out. But I hope it went into the chat. But to the extent that it is there, you know, take a look at that if you are on your computer. But it's, from the idea of what is change management, you know, you establish it's I tend to look at Cotter as the baseline. You establish a sense of urgency. Why does the change need to happen? What's the competitive reality? You create the team that's going to build it. You got your guiding coalition. You develop the vision and the strategy. You know, DJ didn't just go out and say, I need a CLM, I need a product, I need a tool, I'm not going to care about it. He said, here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do it. Here's the vision. Here's the strategy for how we're going to do it. Then DJ communicated the change vision. He gave everybody, he told everyone what's going to happen. And then, going back to the idea you want those model employees, he went out there and said, here's how our team is going to model this for everyone else. DJ talked a moment ago, and I know we got a ton of other questions, so we'll get to them in a second. Empowering broad-based action is what Cotter calls it. I call it more of, you want to get rid of your obstacles. You want to turn detractors into proponents. You want to encourage people to do it. One key thing, and again, is the short-term wins. DJ is able to show, look how much faster this goes. Look how easy this is. You're not just having to find something. It's not going to take me 3 days to find the contract. It's not going to take you a week to determine something. We're able to do it right away. And then after that, it's the positive change wheel. You want to consolidate your gains, you want to produce more change, and then most importantly, and this is one of the hardest steps, is getting that cultural change to take place. Um, so I'll so and that cultural change is actually one of the most important things, because if DJ were to leave today, you know, and he hadn't built that coalition, he hadn't done that. And DJ, I'm hoping you're not leaving today. And I don't know anything that you don't know. I'll be honest. But to that end, by creating that coalition, by creating that ongoing change cycle, AT&T Sports, Warner Discovery now is going to be able to use that going forward. They're going to have that process there, and they're going to be able to repeat it and continue building on it. Um, so uh, Penelope Penelope said, and I'll share this. Sorry, DJ, I'll let you speak for a second. That was a lot of talking from me.
No, no, I didn't have anything to add. We can get to Penelope.
Penelope said from her past experience, and Penelope is a super duper expert in this. Freed up time due to automation may actually allow you to become more strategic and specialized too for value add, because you're able to focus your activities. Personal example, at my prior company, we had an immigration attorney who loved immigration but wanted to expand into more regulatory stuff, especially as COVID began to hit. We automated most of the immigration process so that it was a couple button clicks and a review document for him. He was able to focus on guiding and leading the COVID response at the beginning of COVID. I mean, it really changed the way he did that, and it really made it a lot more effective on how this goes forward. So DJ, question for you. Have you considered the behavioral or process changes you're planning when you're planning on driving when you're developing the requirements for the technology platform you're using, in this case, ContractPod AI? Can you address that question?
Yes, and the answer is yes. We were thinking about the process from the very beginning. ContractPod is really great because there is a lot of customization. They kind of give you exactly what you're looking for, the way you're looking for it. So as we were first coming up with the initial, calibrations, settings, whatever you want to call it, we were thinking about how we're going to roll this out. And it's kind of an ongoing process, because as we've rolled it out and people have learned, we've said, okay, these things work. This part doesn't really work that well. We also want these new things added that we hadn't even thought about from at the very beginning. So now, 8 months in, ContractPod is we're continuing to work with ContractPod to further refine the the process for requesting a new contract or generating a new contract. And yeah, as we continue to refine, we continue to think, how are we going to roll this out? Or now that we've already begun rolling out, we're saying, all right, we know this part of the rollout worked and this part didn't work, so let's change this process in ContractPod. So yes, Colin, we're constantly thinking about that, and ContractPod was really good about helping us think about those things from the very beginning.
Believe it or not, DJ, we have that same process internally. We're good at this, but we're always learning. We're learning from our customers and from our clients, or sometimes because we thought something was a good idea. And I'll share the internal story today. We set up a new process where approvals went to the legal team. And it turned out that you can, even when you're really good at something, you could still learn from your mistakes, because all of a sudden I uploaded something. One of my colleagues, one of our senior counsel here at the company, approved it, even though it was assigned to me. And the salesperson was like, wait, this is with Jerry. What, is everything okay? So we're actually going to go back now and look at our own internal approval process, because we said, hey, we thought this would work really well, and maybe it would work depending on how other things go. But we're able to learn from this, and what I like about that is that's something, if that would come up in the future, if someone said they wanted to do something similar, we would put that out there. So Colin added another question for you, DJ. Did you have to deal with any of the following? And there's a number of them.
Yeah.
Controls to force change, visibility into end runs around desired processes. This is actually really good, Colin, because my next question was going to be, during your implementation, as you've used it, have you seen any difficulties or problems where people have tried to go around it? But going through that list, I'll finish reading it. But DJ, do you have the resources for hypercare? How are you approaching challenging conversations? So, Colin, those are really 4 to 5 questions in itself. So,
Right.
DJ, rapid fire.
So yes, the controls to force change. We don't have anyone like too mutinous. Essentially, as soon as we said this is what we're doing, everyone was kind of on board with it. But going directly into the next question, even after we had rolled out this process, we were still getting people using the old way. Like instead of going into Contract Pod and requesting a new contract, they were filling out the forms and emailing them to Jan and saying, Jan, I don't have time to do this. So then Jan and I are going in and doing it for them, which wasn't ideal. So for that particular situation, we just had to be patient. We didn't want to go to anyone's boss or supervisor and say they're not listening to us. They need to follow the rules. We were like, hey man, I know change sucks and we're all busy. If you need help, if you need a refresher on the process, I'm available. So I made myself available to all of the programmers, and especially to Jan, in the early weeks and months as they're learning the process. I know it doesn't sound like everyone's favorite thing to do, but kind of holding Jan's hand a couple times walking through the process really helped. And now, she's a baby bird that has left the nest and is flying on her own. And after a few one-on-one sessions, people stopped trying to do end runs and were just doing what they were supposed to be doing.
One thing that I found talking about that is at my prior role where I was GC there as well. And when we implemented Contract Pod there, one thing I did was first I made sure the sales team was involved in the implementation, that they got to put that input in. But we actually made for the first 6 to 12 months, we gave incentives to the sales team to make sure they would use it. And really making sure that they felt comfortable, that they didn't have to learn something new, but also having them see, documents and contracts turned around in less than a day, was a humongous incentive because it was no longer, legal slowing it down. Not that we ever were. Legal was, we were always on time and beating our targets. But the constant refrain is, it's with legal. They've sat on it for this time. What we did is, one, we encouraged people. If you did everything right, if you put it through, you were always prioritized at the beginning. And then at one point, the sales leadership and sales operations actually told me they were going to begin penalizing the sales team on a commission basis for not following instructions. So
Interesting.
that business cooperation, where there was a benefit in not only turnaround but also some financial incentive very early to use it, but also the disincentive of a penalty for not following instructions that was led by the sales leadership, was a tremendous focus. And DJ, you and I have talked about this before. We had 100% adoption. I mean, within 2 to 3 months, I didn't see a single document come in via email. My CEO accepted. Other than my CEO, who could just email me or text me, it was just the main that stopping those from happening and getting people excited to use it was a very much a positive thing. Colin, I know we've got a 3 p.m. stop. I know there's 7 minutes left. Do we have more questions, or do we want to just let us finish out the hour? What would you like to do? Colin is throwing all these questions in. Um, have you got a plan for hypercare?
Right.
Resources. Oh, Colin's going to join us. Here he is. Up,
Oh, gone
he
again.
disappeared.
So
Sorry
so
for all the
back to
questions. I'm fascinated with this topic, but my own experience, the hyper phase, like I
right.
love you to lean in on that, DJ, and give us some kind of
Right.
learning.
So we didn't have a plan for hypercare, and we didn't have any additional resources for hypercare. Uh, and by this you mean just kind of like that the period right after training where we were trying to make sure everyone is this, so we're all talking about the same thing. We did not have a plan. We didn't have any additional resources. And this may not, everyone may not be able to do this, but it was just spending a little bit more time, a little bit more effort, helping the slow adopters. Like for every 30-minute call that I had with Jan, where I had to help her relearn or learn a process, is like 2 hours that I have free today. Like Jan has come like a really long way from being afraid to use the system to not being able to use the system without me on a Zoom call with her, to now she is teaching other people how to use the system. She is generating reports for my boss and other bosses. So a little bit of extra effort in that hypercare phase, I think, went such a long way now as we're doing these broader rollouts. Because now we have 2 or 3 Jans that are willing to spread the gospel and help us teach. And so I don't always have to be the one doing the hand-holding Zoom. But because Jan got that hand-holding Zoom, she is now much more willing to do the same for others.
Let me ask you
Colin,
a question. To get to that level of, to save that much time, right? How long does it take, like, from the implementation, the rollout, to give free up those extra hours for Jan to be kind of more efficient, run the reports to the bosses, being in a more, facilitating role?
Well, I'm not going to lie. It took longer than I thought, but not because Contract Pod was slow, just because I forgot about all of my other responsibilities that I have, exchange for my paycheck. We still had to do all this other business as usual stuff while we're implementing this program. So I'm not going to lie. There was extra effort involved. I wasn't working longer hours, but I was doing more Contract Pod stuff early, and maybe a little bit more than I anticipated. But like I said, that has all really paid off in dividends, because now that we are up and running, generating a contract that used to be like 3 forms and 5 emails and half a day is now 1 entry into Contract Pod and a few minutes.
You could have brought up something like when you were talking there. It's like resource restricted, right? And this is happening across the board now with all the talks of the economy. Some of the companies now I'm hearing are kind of buttoning up, right? You have to do kind of more with less. So it sounds like
Right.
you're kind of in that place, like where you kind of need resources after the rollout. So you got to really you got to get buttoned up and kind of know your processes, know the players. It's without the resources, it's very challenging, right?
Yes, I work in the cable television industry. I don't know if anyone is familiar. I wish I could see all the attendees. Raise your hand if you still pay for cable, because it's probably not much of you. So yes, we are dealing with fewer resources. Every year we have fewer people that subscribe to cable. So yeah, we are having to do more with less every
So
day.
I think this goes back to Jerry's like earlier point, Jerry, where you were saying like, hey, people are complaining about AI and efficiencies, right? And it's like taking people's jobs, but a lot of these like businesses are forced to get really more efficient because of these challenges that are
Yeah,
facing
well,
folks every day.
we see the changes, and you know what where one think of it as there's always another door opening. It's a very positive way to think about it, but what we're seeing, even this, the name of the show is Legal Operators, Colin. Legal operations didn't exist 10 years ago, did it? No one had really, you might have been a lawyer who was really good at Excel, or maybe you're a paralegal and you had this function, um, and you were really good at this. But the whole the whole idea is we're always changing. We're inventing new roles. We're finding new ways to do things. So where you know where a where a role changes, or where the knowledge changes, is always something new that you can open. There's this big debate right now, and I think it's fascinating, over these AI art generators. I'm going to talk about something that's not contract related, but if you've heard about, or legal related, but if you've heard about these AI art generators that you put in a phrase or a description of what you want to see, and it thinks for a minute and generates artwork, and you know it's cool and I like it, but I don't go and say, okay, that's the end of artists. I can't personally come up with a concept the same as, you could see the true artists who are like visualizing in their head what they want to see, then directing the AI what to do, then they're taking it and they're making changes on top of it. It's augmentation. It's not the same. Are there, of course, there are ethical issues about it. There are other issues that are coming up, but it's not going to. It's a change. It's a way we deal with it, and we're finding out that all of this can really be a driver for not just enhanced productivity, not just enhanced efficiency, but new roles, new functions, new ways to do business. And I think that's really what's key here is, as you're adopting these, you're creating change, you're finding new ways to do things, and ultimately, you're really growing. You're helping your company grow. You're helping your company function better. And as a lawyer, as an allied professional, you're learning new things and you're gaining new skills.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned something, Jerry. I want to challenge you on something, right? Because you mentioned like, hey, we're not advocating for folks to lose their jobs, but DJ says like it's Jen who's like the reformer. She's gonna probably like outlive her utility, right? Because of AI as well. Is there a silver lining to that where now that you got so much efficiencies, you could probably hire somebody else into a role in the company that can kind of do something on the analytical back end or something to kind of support functionality.
I think that's part of it. Um, I I saw something about this earlier. I never once generated. I started as a litigator, and I apologize for that. Um, but you know, I had no idea ever how to draft a notice of appearance. That's what my paralegal would do for me. I loved her. She did a great job. She had those. She had skills that I didn't have. You know, am I still?
Yeah, still live.
There we go. I heard the phone shut off noise, I think, from Teams. So it's it did is that job going away? Is Jan's job going away? Jan may no longer be doing the receiving the form, but she's still doing that initial check over. She's still making sure that they got the right information in. She's still figuring out where DJ needs to assist. And the AI isn't doing that. Even in our even in some of the really cool portions of Contract Pod AI, contract risk and compliance, it gives you advice, it suggests things, it gives you an idea. But if you have no idea what you're doing, it's not making those decisions for you. We're very clear that this is still something that needs a trained professional, trained legal professional to make that decision. And to that end, you know, I think what we're seeing, going back to the comment I made a moment ago about how legal operations didn't really exist a few years ago, some of these roles, like Jan, if Jan was entering today, she would be a legal ops professional. She would be a law department operations specialist. She would be looking at these and going, how do I make the team work better? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How do I make this go? So, you know, I I like to think of it, it's not so much that you're not getting rid of a job. You're not. You're transforming yourself as well. And we're seeing that in the way people react, the way people use it. And ultimately, the goal is that augmentation, making you better, not taking something away from you, but giving you something new. And really that's where I see it. I'm much better than I was because I've got these tools.
So you're saying like, and the evolution of a role, right? Where
Right.
you're landing somewhere else with more skills and.
I mean, Colin, I don't have someone stand over me with a candle to light my desk as I write with my feather pen anymore. But you know, these things change, and that's I get it. That was a cute, silly statement, but what we're seeing is as one thing changes, a whole new one is growing up. Clock grows every year. ACC legal ops, there's more people every year. Uh, you know, even with COVID, the legal week 2022 was packed to the gills. So it's these are still, all these roles are changes. They're growing, and I think when you make it, where the difficulty is, and DJ touched on this, is when you've got these obstacles. The folks who are saying no, I'm not going to do anything, I refuse to change. Those are a problem because those are the people who are not who are actively undermining. But you could have
Mhm.
someone who's not sure. You mentioned something about your agnostics, your zealots, and your atheists a little earlier.
Yeah.
I think were some of your words. When you have those, as you change those hearts and minds, and you can find new things, you can really make people a lot happier, a lot better, and we're seeing that happen. Um, you know, I just think that that's really the goal is you've got to be willing as you're doing this. If you're not willing to make any changes yourself, you're going to get stuck. But what we see is the teams that we work with, they're bringing in folks, and the folks that are there that are already working are the ones that want to make these changes to make their entire life better and to make their business better and to grow in their roles.
Yeah, I think that's a great note to finish on. We've actually went 7 minutes over like we always do when we get to talking. DJ, Jerry, really appreciate it. This was a fascinating discussion. Attendees, thank you so much for attending and leaning in and asking questions. I recognize a lot of you guys here, and I'll see you at the Summit by the Sea at the Ritz-Carlton Half Moon Bay. We're going to be taking a break from our webinars. This is our 201st webinar over the past couple of years, and you know, we're taking a break for 3 weeks to do our inaugural Summit by the Sea, where we have about 200 attendees from different companies across the US, and look forward to seeing you there. If you're not signed up, think about coming. I'm going to hand it back to Jerry, give him his last word, and then we'll head out. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, DJ, for joining.
Of course.
If you have any questions about Contract Pod, feel free to reach out to me. I'm one of the easiest Jerry Levines or Jerry Levines to find. I did not star in Teen Wolf. I am not the former head of CBS. I am not the producer. I am the lawyer, but not the Indian law lawyer or the Admiralty lawyer. But I'm at Jerry Levine on Twitter and I'm Jerry Levine on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. Feel free to reach out. And again, thank you all for coming. And if you know, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, DJ, Jerry,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.